you managed to rank number one at Cambridge in your third year. Would your 17-year-old self have believed that?
Oh, definitely not. No, thinking back to my 17-year-old self, I was nervous about the whole application process. Going to a comprehensive school, I was kind of thinking maybe I wouldn't get in. And then to have known that I've been able to then do well at my time at Cambridge and really enjoy it as well, I think that would have been, yeah, really cool for my 17-year-old self to hear, and definitely unexpected.
Yeah, I think it's honestly a really impressive achievement. I mean, ranking number one at Cambridge in a specific subject is an achievement in itself, but for medicine, that's like a whole nother league entirely. So, upon reflection, what would you say are the three reasons why you were able to rank number one at Cambridge Medical School? And these can be traits or behaviors that you naturally embody, certain habits or patterns that you engaged with in your time at university. What would you say are the reasons for that?
I'd say the first one is maybe perseverance. I think when you're doing any degree at Cambridge, but I obviously speak about medicine, the subject is really difficult. You're going to come across concepts that at first you have absolutely no idea how to approach them. And I think you can still kind of pass the degree by just memorizing things and getting enough marks to pass. But to kind of do well in the course, I think you have to make sure that every topic you come across that you don't know, you then are able to explore until you've got that deep understanding. Think it allows you to be able to then answer essay questions on that topic and write something, even if you've not memorized an answer, and also to do better at the multiple choice papers as well. So I think, yeah, definitely persevering when things are hard, because I've never found any concept easy at first. And then another one, I'd maybe say curiosity. I think being really, really interested in your subject is important. And it means that when you've got loads of reading to do and you're spending long days studying, it doesn't feel quite as arduous. Sometimes I'd be reading a paper and then it would just send me down a rabbit hole to another paper. And then eventually I might find something that would be a really interesting point to include in an essay. So I think if you're just genuinely really interested in what you're learning about, then it doesn't feel quite as difficult. And the last one would maybe be being really organized. I think I'm actually quite an organized person. I probably always have been at school as well. But when you're at Cambridge or Oxford, you probably want to get involved in all the societies and all the fun things there are to do. And just being organized with your time so that you've got time to do the work and time to have fun, make friends, get involved in stuff. Think if you just do your degree and nothing else, you'll kind of burn out and not get much out of the experience. So if you're organized, you're able to have enough time to actually go into your degree in depth, but also enough time to enjoy being at uni.
Yeah, I think those traits that you mentioned are really interesting because, in the first instance, you could argue that I was expecting you to say something like, you've got to understand in depth the potassium ion channels of every single nerve cell in the body. I'm just making this up because I have no idea about medicine. But actually, you've distilled them into three very relatable and realistic characteristics that I think people can aspire towards. Really, what it boils down to from what you've said is that if you enjoy medicine, you're curious about the subject, you can work hard and you can plan your time well, then you have a very good chance of getting into medical school and doing very well, as you say. Now, diving a bit deeper into that, on the topic of organization, can you talk me through your daily routine? What did you do in peak demand season of Cambridge to make sure that you got your first class?
Okay, I'll think of a day when I was in kind of Easter term exam season back in third year when I was doing my undergraduate degree. So I'd probably wake up about 8, start my day with something nice to eat for breakfast, start the day off well. I made sure to never neglect things like meal times and having healthy habits, even in exam season. I would, in the morning, I'd probably either work at my desk or go to a cafe in Cambridge to work, just 'cause it's nice being surrounded by other people. And that would be probably most of my day just spent doing quite a bit of work. But I would try and change scene as much as I could. So I would go to the library in the evening or work at my desk in the evening, different to how I've been doing it during the day, just so that you're not in one place all day. And even in exam season, I would say that I still managed to see friends quite a bit, even if friends were also studying. Everyone kind of relates to that. So you can fit in seeing friends around your busy schedule. And yeah, I'd say I stayed pretty kind of healthy with it all the way through. It's important to avoid burning out. But then my days throughout the year before exam season would have been a lot more varied and a lot more fun than that. So it makes sure you've got a fun year and then you're able to just graft for the last part.
And in terms of your actual revision strategy, when you come and sit down in front of your notes or a piece of paper, what do you do? Because I'm trying to understand whether you think there's a silver bullet strategy for revision. Because personally, when I was studying at Cambridge, my revision strategy was pretty simple. It was make a load of essay plans, learn them really well, and then do practice questions. And that pretty much allowed me to get a first class. But I'd imagine in medicine, it's perhaps a little bit more complex. There's a lot going on. There's anatomy, there's all different types of subjects that I don't know. So, what do you do when you come and sit at your desk? What's your strategy?
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty similar. So in first and second year, the way that our exams worked was we'd have essay papers and then multiple choice question papers. It'd be kind of a balance between the two. So I'd say for the essay papers, it was just about doing as many essay plans as possible and then kind of memorizing those essay plans. And for me, I found that if I did an essay plan on a subject, that would then allow me to have the understanding of that topic. So I'd then be able to answer the multiple choice questions on it by default. So a lot of people kind of like to use Anki or something, but that never really worked for me because I think I preferred to learn it as a concept so that I'd keep the understanding of kind of the higher level concepts there rather than just memorizing individual facts. So I think that worked pretty well for me, just doing a lot of essay plans. And then for third year, which was when I feel I kind of did the best, that's when we get to pick a different subject for a year. So at Cambridge and Oxford and some other medical schools, you do an integrated bachelor's degree in your third year, where you get to go quite in depth into a subject, do a dissertation on it. And for that, it was 100% essays. So that was when I did kind of just essay plans. And in order to be able to get into a position of writing those, I spent most of the year reading around all of my lectures. So I'd do the lecture and then I'd spend a few hours after it going and reading what the different references that the lecturers would put into the slides were, and making sure that I kind of came up with a few of my own thoughts on them or read a bit around the context of them, added that to my notes, and then I'd be able to make an essay plan on it. So I think essay plans were really, really helpful for all of the first 3 years.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And I'm really glad you said that. And I'm also very glad you said the word Anki, because I have a lot to say about Anki. So,
Yes.
in my view, taking a step back, I think there are two fundamental ways you can revise. Number one is the Anki model, which is leveraging the concepts of spaced repetition and active recall, as you know. Learn a load of flashcards, dump as much information as you can in your brain, and hope that something sticks. Or there's another theory of memorization or revision, which is, I don't have a term for it, but I'm going to call it the web model or the Gestalt model, which is where you, in your mind, work out the 50 to 100 conceivable topics that could come up. So the universe of topics that could come up in your examination and write essay plans on them. And what you'll find is, as you know this well yourself, that the more essay plans you write, the more interconnected some of the topics seem with each other. And so you can really start to form this big web or this big picture of knowledge in your head. And the web model is something that I use at university. I was never the sort of person that wanted to create flashcards on all my lectures and memorize them off by heart because it just felt a bit trivial and pointless for the
Yeah.
final exam. And I think the one thing, as you know, that is really important at Cambridge is being able to understand how things link together. And as you know, when you're writing essay plans, you are able to form a more complete picture of the concepts. And I don't want to bash the Yankee users because it just depends on what type of person you are. My brother and his best mate at uni treated Anki as a religion. They would honestly wake up every day and made sure they did their 100, 200 reviews. And if they didn't, then their life was over. But I wasn't into that. I was more into the web model of exams. So that's really interesting. It's nice to hear that your strategy perhaps isn't what people think. And it's something that is relatable and also pretty achievable as well. Now, on your journey to getting a first class degree and also ranking first in the cohort, would you say that you sacrificed anything along the way? Because I think it's a really interesting point to think about what do you give up on the journey to success or the journey to the pinnacle at the top of the mountain? You have to leave a few things behind. And
Mm.
naturally, I would imagine, unless you're some super gifted superhuman, that maybe your work-life balance was a bit skewed in third year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're a genius, which you are.
No, not at all. I think you're right that you can't really have everything all at the same time. I think you do have to work out what's important to you. I think you have to kind of have a look at your life and think what things are actually most important. So for me, I've always been kind of a bit of a granny, I guess, in terms of my hobbies. I really love spending time with my friends, but I also love going to coffee shops. I love doing art. I'm not so much of a kind of going out sort of person. And so for me, it was quite easy that I wouldn't really want to be going out to clubs and drinking and stuff that much because it's just not something I naturally enjoy. My hanging out with my friends is a bit more low key, and so it was kind of quite easy to fit in around my schedule. But equally, if you are someone who kind of does enjoy going out, then you shouldn't necessarily have to sacrifice that if it's something that you get a lot of value out of. So I'd say that, yeah, I probably did go out a lot less than other people in my cohort, but that's not necessarily something that's like better about me. It's just who I am anyway. It's just natural for me. I think there were times in third year where my balance was skewed more towards work than life, but probably only in the actual exam term itself. I think that was easier because all my friends were kind of the same. We were all just working a lot. So when you've got that environment of supportive people around you who are all sort of helping each other and all want each other to do well, it's a lot easier to do that. And then for the rest of the year, I'd had quite a good work-life balance, really. I enjoyed a lot of the fun that Cambridge has to offer. Just, yeah, I look back on it really fondly as a time that I really enjoyed being a student and being in the city. It was only really those last few weeks before the exam where I think things got skewed far more in the work direction. And I think if you're kind of consistent with your work throughout the year, you don't just leave it all until the end of the year. You are able to do that and still have fun throughout it. It's just about being really organized with your time.
Yeah. I think it's a great point because a lot of the questions we get asked, and I was actually giving a presentation in a school recently, and one of the students asked me, "Is Cambridge boring?" And it strikes me as really interesting because I do think it is important to at least partially consider to what extent are you going to have fun at university.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's also more important to bear in mind to what extent is this experience going to set me up very well for the future? Because university is a platform. It's a platform in two ways. It sets you up for a future career, but it also sets you up with a network of people that you can learn from and love your whole life, right? I mean, the people I'm sure you've met at Cambridge are some of your best friends and really smart and fantastic. And so I try and encourage people not to worry too much about the work-life balance because in my view, if you've been given the opportunity to study at two of the best universities in the world, then you shouldn't worry too much about the social side of things because this is your opportunity to to shine and to make use of all the resources around you. Having said that, I am a bit of an extremist. I do tend to work quite hard and I do really love and get a lot of value from work.
Mm.
But what is there to do in Cambridge in terms of outside of your lectures? When you're not studying, when you're not working, what do you do for fun? And what do other people do for fun? So let's try and dispel this Cambridge is
Yeah.
boring myth.
Yeah, I definitely would say that Cambridge is not boring. And I think my main reason for that is just all the amazing people that I've met. I've got friends who I just know that I'm going to have for life. And I think that was something where at school, I didn't necessarily feel that I had those kind of supportive friend groups in the same way. There were people who were really nice and I got on with, but Cambridge has been the first time where I felt like I really found my people. And so it's been completely the opposite of boring to me in that respect. But in terms of things you can actually then go out and do, there's so many societies. Cambridge and probably loads of other unis as well you can get involved with. So whatever your hobby is. So for me, I played the viola. So I played in some orchestras while I was here, and that was quite fun. Um, there's a lot of sports options available. So I've got friends who play loads of football and that kind of thing, and you can get involved with sport at a college level or at a uni level. There's creative societies as well. So I've had kind of art related ones where I've gone along and been able to paint with other people, and it's just been really nice and chill. And then the city itself has also got a lot to offer. So it's got loads of history, loads of culture. I enjoy going to museums, galleries. The Botanic Gardens is one of my favorite places in the uni. It's just so peaceful. Can go there for a nice walk. So there genuinely is so much to do. And I think if you get here and find people who you're like-minded, you'll all be able to find stuff to do together that you'll enjoy.
Yeah, that's it. There's an eclectic mix of people at Cambridge. There are people who like going out, like clubbing, like drum and bass, that sort of stuff. I was probably in that category to some extent in first year, and then transitioned into the more wholesome, less hedonistic group of people who like going on walks, museums, nice meals. So I think it's safe to say that you'll pretty much find your people wherever you go, Oxford or Cambridge. There are going to be similar, like-minded people to you for sure. Now, I want to shift track and talk about medical applications themselves. And I think one thing that, or at least two things that prospective applicants will really want to hear from you is how do you get into Cambridge medicine and what are the Oxbridge admissions tutors looking for in a candidate?
Yeah, so it's such a hard question to answer, and I think there's some kind of a lot of myths around this as well. When I was applying, I was so nervous that you just had to have some special quality that you either would have or you haven't, and I don't think that's true at all. I think for a start, you need to have shown that you've been able to do well at school, and they do take into account what school you've come from as well, and whether your results are kind of good for people of your school. Like, so that's not something that I would worry about. But if you make sure you stick in for your GCSEs and A levels, even if it's a subject that you're not going to study at uni, make sure that you've still kind of worked hard at it so that you can show that you've got that work ethic. Um, I think they're looking for good performance in the entrance exams. This is a chance to show that you've been able to work hard and can answer the different questions because you'll be up against all of the other applicants from across the country and across the world. And for medicine, this test is now the UCAT. And I would recommend preparing maybe 8 weeks or so in advance and just spending a lot of time doing as many past paper questions as possible. You often hear from people that you can't revise for it, and that's completely wrong. You 100% can revise from it. And if you don't, I think you'll put yourself at quite a disadvantage. You definitely can't get by on just being like naturally smart or something. It is all about putting in the time. And if it's something that you want to do, then it's definitely worth it. I think for the UCAT, a lot of it is just recognizing the different patterns of questions. So there's lots of question banks online. Some of them you can pay for and some of them are free. And just doing as many as possible every day in that summer of between year 12 and 13 before you're applying, I think it's really important. And then there's kind of a lot of other parts to the application as well, like the interview, which I just recommend trying to get practice if possible. So if you do know anyone who's been to Oxbridge before, then ask them if they're able to give you a quick interview practice. I've done this for some students at my school before. Or if you don't, you can literally just speak to a friend or a family member or your dog or your cat or something and just have a practice of just answering some possible questions and just practice speaking in front of people. Because the interview is really just a test of will you be able to thrive in a supervisions or tutorial setting that we have at Oxbridge, where you learn through having these small group teaching sessions to really get stuck into a concept. So if you can show an interview that you're just able to get stuck in, and if you don't know the answer, you're prepared to think about it and talk through your thoughts, that's what they're looking for in that part of the application.
I'd like to dive a bit deeper into the interview if we can, and
Yeah.
not to use a pun here, but to dissect the actual characteristics of an Oxbridge interview, and then from that infer a general set of advice that I can give to the students watching this. So, can you walk me through, in as much detail as you can, what happens during a Cambridge interview for medicine?
Yeah, of course. So mine were during COVID, so it was a little bit different. They were all online. I think some are still online and some are in person. But I had three different interviews. The first one was kind of a general interview where they talked a bit about some things on my personal statement. Or now I know you don't have a personal statement. You write answers to questions on the UCAS application, but same sort of thing. The second one was an interview about my personality, how I cope with stress, the kind of more medical, personal side of things. And then the third interview was just a pure science interview where they gave me some difficult biology, chemistry questions and tried to see how I would cope with those. So with each of the interviews, I think it's important to take a second once you've heard the question, have a think about it. You don't need to rush into an answer and you don't need to know straight away. You want to be able to show them that you're really thinking through the question in all of its different parts and that you're able to think on your feet. you probably won't know the answer instantly because they are hard. It is good practice to know your personal statement or whatever the kind of equivalent is really well, because if they do ask you about this, you have to be prepared to show that you've then read beyond what you've written a few months ago, and that you've not just written something for the sake of it. I think that will be quite impressive to them. And then for the science interview, I think go back to basics of what you know from school, what you've learned from all your courses, and then try and just think that a little bit deeper and try something out. And if it's wrong, they'll kind of guide you away from that answer and guide you towards something that's a bit more on track. And let yourself sort of be taught a little bit in the interview. Imagine it is a supervision.
Can I ask you an interview question that my brother got in his actual interview back in
Oh gosh, I'll
2015?
probably get it wrong, but
Oh, I don't think you will, to be fair. Okay. Why is the fetus not rejected by the mother's immune system?
That is actually quite an interesting question. I do know some of the things for this one actually, because we did quite a bit on it in second year. But the fetus is kind of you have immune tolerance where the if you've got a part of the body, or I guess a fetus becomes part of your body, then your immune system is taught not to reject it. Got special types of T cells that are able to suppress the immune response. Um, and there is a degree to which a slight immune response towards the fetus is quite useful, because it helps to create the formation of the placenta. So a little bit of kind of immune incompatibility is important to be able to form the blood vessels of the placenta. So yeah, it's one of those questions that if you won't have studied anything about that at school at all. Like there's no way that you'll have studied the immune system in any depth or anything to do with fetuses. But I think a question like that, go back to basics of what you know about the immune system. And you could even think about why it's important for the fetus not to be rejected. Why would the fetus be rejected? Remembering that the fetus has got obviously part of the genetics from the dad, part from the mum. So there's always going to be that 50% that's not the same as the mum's own genetics. And then maybe think about other types of rejection or acceptance. Maybe you'll have seen about transplants and how they're not rejected. Go back to basics on what you do know and focus on what you do know. And then whoever's having the interview, they'll be able to guide you towards what the correct answer is.
Yeah, I think that's super important advice, because 75% of the time you'll get to interview and you'll be asked a question which you have no idea about, or at
Mm.
least on the surface, it seems like you have no idea about. And I think it's always useful to come back to first principles and start by defining what you know. And in this case, as
Mm.
you said, start by defining the immune system. What is the immune system? How does it work? Why would a fetus get rejected in the first place? And that's where you talk about antigens and T cells, as you rightly pointed out. I'm not a doctor, so if any of this is wrong, please correct me. And that's exactly what you should do. And as you mentioned, the interviewer will begin to guide you towards the right answer. They're not expecting a candidate to have the answer straight away. And even, yourself as a fourth going on to fifth year Cambridge graduate, you have to think about it for a second, right? It's not something that
Yes.
immediately comes to you. And it's often through talking out loud and verbalizing your thoughts that you can get to the right answer in time.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the nuances of Cambridge medicine, because there might be a lot of people watching this that are on the fence whether they should apply. They're a bit intimidated by the workload and the academic prestige of the university, and maybe they want to try another med school like UCL or Leeds or something. What separates Oxbridge medicine from other Russell Group medicine?
Yes, so I think all different med schools have their merits, and there's not one that's better than all the others, and different ones will be a different fit for different people. But the Cambridge course in itself appealed to me quite a lot, because you spend the first 3 years gaining a really strong scientific understanding, and then the second 3 years having 100% clinical placement, so being on placement all the time. And I think to 17-year-old me, who was maybe a little bit nervous about the whole thing, the idea of having a 3 years to kind of have a classic university experience and to learn the science in good depth, and then be 21, 22 before I'm actually on the wards doing medicine, that felt quite reassuring. And now looking back, I'm really glad I did. I think having that 3 years of science meant that I entered the wards a lot more confident, and also being that bit older, I had a bit more maturity and a bit more confidence speaking to patients, that I just don't think I'd have had at 18. And also having that scientific grounding and getting the intercalated bachelor's degree, which you do in third year, it opens up other choices for you. So I'm quite lucky that I have enjoyed clinical placement in fourth year, but I knew that if I didn't enjoy it, I could also walk away with a bachelor's degree in natural sciences. Um, and that just opens up a lot more career opportunities. So it's impossible to be 100% sure that medicine's going to be for you until you've actually tried it out. It's it's interesting, and even now I get times where I think, oh, is it definitely for me? I think that's just natural. But to then have the reassurance that as well as the medical degree, you've also got the bachelor's in science, it is quite reassuring. And there's also a lot of good opportunities to get involved in research while you're at Cambridge. I quite like the idea of being an academic doctor where you do half your time clinical practice and half your time working on research projects. And I've been able to be involved in publications and getting to, do lots of different types of research. And because Cambridge and Oxford and probably some other unis as well have got a lot of research going on at the same time, you can get involved in that very easily, and you're quite well supported by the structure of the course to do so. So those are just some of the reasons. There's merits to other courses as well. I think people who've been able to do the clinical placements from the beginning maybe feel like they've had more exposure to the wards, and that can be a really good thing. But I think this way has just worked really well for me. And being someone who really enjoys science, I loved getting to go so in depth into the scientific subjects first.
Yeah, it really does seem that Oxbridge provides you with an unparalleled level of optionality with regard to what you want to do with your future. Even in some cases, you can quit medicine in your third year and do a master's in management if you want to at the business school, or you can take that as your third year tripos. So it really is great to have that flexibility when you apply. Now, I want to talk a bit about the intellectual environment of Oxbridge because I am under the impression, having studied there myself, that it can get a bit competitive and the tension, or at least the seeming tension that is on the surface, might be a bit too much to deal with. I remember myself, you're thrown into this really high pressure, fast paced, intellectually rigorous environment, and there are people that are genuinely just better than you, straight up better than you. And that can be quite challenging to feel as a burden. It's quite a big weight to carry on your shoulder at times, and it can cause you to feel like an imposter, and it can cause you to work less hard because you think, oh, what's the point? I'm never going to beat them anyway. What's your take on that? Now, I know that there's clearly some bias here because you probably are the person that everyone is trying to compete against because
No, definitely
you,
not.
you topped the year. So it's a bit of a role reversal here. But I'm really keen to hear your perspective on what the competitive environment is like at Oxbridge.
Yeah, I think I'd like to start by saying that, I feel like I did really, really well in third year. That was when I came first. I'm so happy with that. But for my first year, especially my first term, I felt like I was just completely struggling and had no idea what I was doing. And there were so many people who'd come from quite good competitive schools who just knew a lot more science than me at the start. And so I'd go into supervisions, I'd have no idea, I'd get questions wrong. And then I remember I cried after some of them. I just felt really bad. But I think it's then having that perseverance and the confidence to think, well, I've got here for a reason. There must be something that I've done right to allow me to get here, and then to put the time in. And I think part of it is if you've had to graft quite a lot yourself, if you've not been to a school where things have just been naturally kind of given to you in the same way, you've then got such a toolkit to support you of your own studying skills that you can then fall back on. And so I felt like quite quickly I was able to catch up and then do a lot better once I just remembered the types of skills that I'd already been able to gain while I was doing my GCSEs and A levels. And you do have to just give yourself like a pat on the back and just try and make yourself feel confident, because otherwise it would be so easy to get carried away in the imposter syndrome. And I've felt bits of that all the way through. Like even this year, I've had times on the wards thinking that I just don't necessarily belong here, or that things are really hard. But I think it's in those moments, just remembering how far you've come and how proud of that your past self would be that you've got that far. And then the other main part is that there are a lot of toxic, competitive people at Cambridge, and I always think it's so much better to be supportive of people. Like I've always just shared my resources with anyone who drops me a message because I think, oh, why gatekeep if you've got resources that work? It's just better to support everyone to do well. But there are some people who definitely don't have that attitude and who do just want to be the best. I think you'll find these people everywhere, but you definitely get them a lot at Oxbridge. And you just need to be so careful with who you surround yourself with. There's plenty of people at Oxbridge who are not like that. I've got the loveliest friends who are not like that at all and who are just supportive and nice, and we just chat about other things. This year, for example, I've lived in a house that hasn't had any other medics in, so none of our conversations around the dinner table have been, "What have you been up to on placement?" It's been about, oh, like just random life things. And that's been so much healthier because you're not reminded of your degree all the time. Everyone's doing their own different subjects, and you can be interested in what each other is doing without feeling the pressure. So having maybe a diverse group of friends, not just the people in your course, and having people who want to help support you and who are proud of you rather than trying to be competitive with you. But yeah, it's tough. And I think you get better at it each year, but it's still something to learn.
Yeah, I love the word gatekeeping there because this was something that characterized most of my school days. I think you come from school and really school is, it can be a pretty toxic environment because everyone's under the age of 18, insecure, aren't that confident. And so they are naturally going to keep things for themselves and think that it's going to benefit them somehow. But I remember in my final year of geography, I had a group of 3 or 4 friends and we'd come together every 3 or 4 days and just share our essay plans with each other. And
Mhm.
that whole concept of sharing is so foreign to a
Yeah.
GCSE or A level student. And it really is the tide that lifts all boats. And if you share with other people, you can benefit from them and learn from them. And in most cases, people will know something that you don't. And they might
Yes.
have a perspective on an essay or a topic that you don't. And the power of multiple voices is so much better than the power of one. So, yeah, gatekeeping is something that I have put in the bin as when I got university,
Yes.
and now I share resources. Or when I was at university, resources were always shared with everyone freely. Now, on the topic of your previous self, I wanted to wrap up with just a bit of self help slash philosophy slash development. If you could go back to your 17-year-old self, what would you advise her before she was applying to medical school?
That's such a nice question. Yeah, it's hard to actually go back and think what was I most worried about. But I remember at 17, I was probably just anxious about everything. I think also being 17 in the pandemic was quite a weird, rough time. As everyone probably remembers, like that time 5 years ago, it was just weird. I think my biggest advice would be that everything does just work itself out. I do believe that wherever you end up going for university, whether that's Oxbridge or somewhere else, you will have amazing experiences there, and you will meet people who are going to shape your future. And if you take on all the opportunities that get offered to you, things are going to definitely work out. So I think having a little bit more trust that things will work out and that you're able to make them work out. Um, I think I'd say to my 17-year-old self that in terms of putting loads of effort into the application and working hard, that was all worth it. If you're in the middle of prepping for entrance exams right now, or maybe you're waiting for A level results or something, all of that stress is worth it because it gives you the best chance at getting to where you want to be. Um, and more kind of personally, I think I would say that you're just going to meet really, really great people. And so all of your worries about will you be able to make friends at uni and will you have like a nice social life at uni, that isn't something to worry about because you will. And I've enjoyed uni so much more than I enjoyed my time at school just because um, my social life has been a lot better. So I think those are probably the main bits of advice. But yeah, it's hard to remember.
No, they're 3 great pieces of wisdom I think our viewers will benefit from. Alice, I will leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on ranking number 1 again. Or
Thank
it
you.
was a year ago, but still, it's a very, very impressive achievement. And have a great summer.
Thank you very much.